Welcome to our webinar, Architecting the Future of GenAI Ready Ecosystem in the Cloud. My name is Jan Berends Weert, and I'm delighted to be your moderator for this session. This is an exciting moment for us all, as today's webinar marks the first in a series of 5 sessions dedicating to exploring the immense potential of generative AI. Over these sessions, we'll uncover various facets of GenAI's integration into the cloud, helping you to prepare the transformative changes ahead. Today, we will start by focusing on architecting the foundational ecosystem required to report GenAI applications in the cloud. Today's structure will be that we will begin with a 5-minute introduction, as I have started already. Then we have 3 fantastic presentations, each lasting up to 10 minutes, delivered by expertise panelists. And finally, we'll wrap up with a 10 minutes Q&A session at the end. And you are encouraged to participate by sending your questions via the chat at any point during the session. I'll curate these questions and post them to our speakers during the Q&A session at the end. The total duration of this webinar is 45 seconds, so let's make the most out of it. Now, let me introduce our esteemed panel of speakers. We have Andy Yagnaswamy, we have Susan Malik, and we have Bip Shukla. Each speaker will bring a unique perspective to help us understand what takes it to build a future-ready cloud ecosystem for generative AI, and will do so. And they will do their own introduction. Andy, please, can you start? I can't hear you. Andy, you're still on mute.
Thank you, JB, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the participants in this webinar. I'm excited to be here. My introduction, I'll keep it short. Most of it is there on the slide that you can see, but I really want to talk about what excites me. What excites me is working on technology adoption and creating the strategy and roadmap and the practical governance and guardrails to make technology or to democratize emerging technology. My experience spans various geographies and from tech consulting firms to cloud providers to end consumers in the industry, and across industries like energy manufacturing and mobility. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to the session.
Thank you, Andy. Please, Susan, can you continue?
Yeah. Okay. Hey, thank you, Andy, and thanks, Zebi, for setting the context. I'm Susan Malik. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Hub. We specialize in data engineering, data science, cloud modernize, and of late, GenAI. So I have almost 24 plus years experience in various technologies, and I'm an evangelist in terms of GenAI and data science, data engineering, helping many customers moving the needles of late, particularly for GenAI, how we are helping customers in terms of not also doing the POCs, but also moving the POC workload into production, particularly using GenAI technologies, while keeping data security and data governance in place. Yeah, and yeah, Bip, you can go next.
Hey, hi all. I'm Bip Shukla. I'm a principal industry specialist as part of AWS Financial Services. My focus is data and AI. So I work mainly the EMEA region with financial services customer to help them strategize and build enterprise-grade platform on AWS Cloud to drive that transformation through data, AI, ML, and GenAI. Very excited to be here and love to share our experience with delivering modernizing data and AI platform on AWS Cloud.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. And let's get started with the first presentation. Andy, please, the stage is yours.
Thank you, JB. And hi, hello again. And before we get into the presentation, just wanted to set some context because GenAI is a very broad and nuanced topic at the same time. And for the purpose of this session, I will talk in the context of text generation using large language model, leaving areas related to image generation and synthesis like diffusion, nerfs, and variational autoencoders out of the discussion. It's also pertinent to consider that every firm's journey to the cloud and AI is different. So for the purpose of this presentation, I've created a generalized view. So please have this context boundary in mind in relation to the content and the examples that I'll talk about. So in the next 7 to 10 minutes, what are we going to, what am I going to talk about? Well, the fact that Gen AI is in every CIO's wish list, and successful AI adopters will pick both of compliance and innovations, usually thought of as an either or, but it's actually an and problem to solve. And also how downshifting the governance process to the foundations and cloud data and developer experience can speed up your Gen AI adoption in the cloud. And integrating Gen AI as part of the adoption strategy is also going to be something that's going to be important in terms of showing quick return on investment. So let's start with what's happening. Can we go to the next slide, JB? Okay. And as I can see that the animations have failed, so but that doesn't matter. So Gen AI, is accessible in the hands of every smartphone holder, and we all saw that statistic that came out a year back or something, which said that ChatGPT adoption has been faster than Instagram, and that it took ChatGPT 5 days to reach 1 million users compared to Instagram, which took 2.5 months. Uh, yeah, it, the thing is that yes, we are comparing what happened in 2010 to what is happening in 2022. So obviously there is going to be an organic increase in the speed of adoption. But having said that, the trend is clear, right? It may look a bit skewed, but the trend is true that Gen AI adoption has been fast. So does that mean Gen AI is powerful? Yes, Gen AI is powerful, but let's remember that the power of Gen AI is not in its use, but in its application. Now, you might wonder, what's the difference between use and application? Uh, well, if you're looking at somebody who is actually paying the bill for building Gen AI solutions, then you might want to look at the difference as whether you're spending money, right, on Gen AI, or you're making money out of it, right? So use is associated with spending money, and application is about making money. And imagine this: all of us use technology. Some of us have smartphone, and some of us are using them to spend more, right? We go on a shopping spree, online shopping spree, whereas some of us are also using them to save more. So it's a simple difference between how you consciously make decisions, where you're also considering the return of investment. So how do you make money off your Gen AI investment? Shall we move to the next slide? Yeah, before we answer that question, let's now do a role play, right? Let's look at the, what the thought that's there in CIO's minds is that, so, I am in the Netherlands, so I understand the market over here and the challenges that the industry is having, especially with technology adoption. So imagine you're a CIO in Netherlands operating a company that's anywhere between 1 billion to, a 10 billion segment. What's on your mind as a CIO entering 2025, right? There is DNB, there is NIS2, there is DORA, there is the EU AI Act, there is GDPR, right? Compliance comes to a CIO's mind first, more often. But what do you hear your industry peers talk about? You hear all of them talk about Gen AI, right? And so there are the two sides, right? Innovation and compliance. And thanks. And the CIO needs to have a way to come up with the value of these investments. And there are three avoid scenarios for that, right? So CIOs, before making a decision on investing, there are three things that they want to avoid, right? What bad looks like. One is business erosion, which is you make an investment in technology, but your business actually, your market share goes down. How does that happen? Well, if you implemented something that runs into a compliance issue, then that's negative publicity, brings down the business, right? The top line and also bottom line in some scenarios, because there's up to about 7% of the organization's revenue that can be a penalty for non-violation with of the EU AI Act. The second one is business stagnation, which means, hey, great, you implemented the technology, it saved you a lot of money, but it's not helping you grow. It's not helping you scale. And you heard Sushant talk about it. Later in this presentation, we're also going to talk about scale. The last one is business inhibition, which means that, hey, you have implemented technology, but you've not implemented either to save money or to grow your market share. And these are all things that go through the CIO's mind. I try to put it in a framework that I call, the tech investment negative value framework. You can call it anything that you want. It's a pretty common sense approach for technology investment decisions. Next slide. So that presents the CIO with the choice, right? So do you want to pick compliance or do you want to pick innovation? It's a very difficult answer because the CIO wants to pick both. But how do you do that? Next slide. The thing with successful CIOs is that they've mastered operating models, right? Which means that they have defined a way for their organization to function wherein the problems are handled by expertise at the right level, right? Which means it works as a well-oiled machine. Now, quite often when people think about cloud, data, developer experience, Gen AI, they all think about it as vertical silos. But the reality is they're horizontal silos. And the good news here is that because of the fact that hyperscalers are offering Gen AI platform, there's governance that can be applied at the lowest levels of the foundation, which is, at the cloud level, at the hyperscaler level, at the data platform level, and also at the developer experience or developer tools level, and then at the foundation model platform level and Gen AI development level. And why this is important is that there are a lot of organizations that don't have governance as evolved, for the threats that and the risks posed by Gen AI adoption, and they try to solve it at a product level. What your product teams need to be doing is to push the undifferentiated heavy lifting of the governance down, right? We've heard about pushing operations, right? Undifferentiated heavy lifting of operations down right up to the hyperscaler level. With Gen AI development, we want to look at pushing governance down, right? There's a lot of requirement in the EU AI Act for traceability, right? You have to prove what data you have used, whether you had consent for that data, is that data protected? Did you have access to that data? Should you have had access to that data? And also things like you're not using your Gen AI solutions to build software that manipulates people's minds into doing something. So the goal is, or the strategy is, push governance, downshift governance to the lower levels. Let your Gen AI developers have an environment where they can focus on building. So build a layered governance for Gen AI. And the last slide, please.
You have 1 minute, a little over.
Yeah. Yes. And so the point that, the three takeaways that I'd like you to leave with is this mental model in mind, right? Because quite often when we think about governance, we think in terms of, the foundations in cloud, data management, and also the development processes. Now, these help you address things like risk and compliance, data governance, cost management, and also security operation. But one thing that gets missed out is product integrations. Right? Whatever you're shipping out from a governance standpoint and an operating model standpoint, you also want to define a way to quickly integrate them. And the reason for that is that the sooner that you integrate your Gen AI solutions and productionize them, the faster they would grow. And the reason for that, and so what you want to do is build the governance foundations for Gen AI early, right? Focus on the bottom layers first, in parallel with the product that you're building. Also realize that the Gen AI model's accuracy will increase over time and with use. So accuracy is not something that you're going to get 100% off on day one, right? It will continue to improve. So, and that's going to be done by the providers of the models for you. That's not something that you want to work on. What you want to work on is how is it that the applications that you create using the GenAI models are able to quickly integrate into your overall application ecosystem and also address or also are safe to or also align to the governance that you have laid out and integrate them in parts, right? Quite often with technology, we like to go for perfection. But that's what probably my other panelists or the presenters here would also want to talk about, is to focus on how can you quickly get your POCs out for production. And yeah, thanks for that. And any questions, happy to answer.
Thank you, Andy. Really good insight. Questions, please use the chat, and I quickly give over to Susanne.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Andy. Thanks for setting the context. What are the CIO challenges, and how you should build a governance foundation for GenAI ready workloads or applications. So, if I summarize, what Andy talked about, right? So, what are the key components for an enterprise or for CIO to adopt, GenAI? It's not just, hey, I have an use case. I'll just go and start using ChatGPT or Bedrock or whatever it is. But hey, you need to have really the good strategy, vision, values, risk, and adoptions, right? So if I summarize those four layers, again, this is also as per Gartner report that any enterprise who are going to adopt AI or GenAI should have the four pillars: vision, to ensure that you establish your vision for GenAI. What are the goals? What are the benefits you are going to get? And very important, the success metrics, right? You need to define that KPIs. At what point you should say, okay, I'm successful, right? And then values, right? Again, it's not just right, creating those POCs or GenAI and applications, but is it really going to impact my business? Is it going to impact my customers? Is it going to really impact my top line or my bottom line? Is it going to bring a new change management? Okay, what are the challenges in terms of upskilling the people? Because people are now talking about, okay, GenAI is going to kill all the jobs. Is it reality? Hey, how we can upskill people, right? So that people who could be non-relevant, but they can take it up the new job and reskill themselves for the GenAI ready ecosystems, right? And then while you are thinking about adapting GenAI, very important the risk, right? What Andy talked about, there are various industry regulations, whether you are in EU or in APAC, or you are in US or other countries. Every country has specific regulatory requirements to ensure that you establish those compliance requirements. You have the right security and compliance foundations, and also you have competency and controls to establish, right? And obviously that will help you to adopt the GenAI much faster. So when you are going to adopt at scale, it's very important you identify what use cases and what the values they're going to map, like impact, and then you have to build a GenAI decision ecosystem or decision tree, and finally there should be a decision governance. And if you establish this, obviously you are going to be more successful in adopting the GenAI ecosystems at scale. So now let's talk about GenAI enterprise framework, right? Let's say if I'm an enterprise organizations and I want to now implement some kind of framework. I talk about, right, you need to have framework before you go and use, right? So what could be those framework, right? If I convert that the mind map, there are 5 or 6 pillars. One is the use cases. You need to definitely identify what kind of use case you want to do. Is it text summarization? Is it data analytics? Is it data extractions, or is it marketing, copywriting, or whether you want to enhance your writing steps and so forth? And then you identify what kind of GenAI applications you are going to use, whether it's going to be just an admin portal or chat agent or AI task or any kind of custom AI agent which needs to be built. And then to use those services, obviously under the hood, you need all the stacks, right? Whether it's LLM ops or the cloud operations or LLM frameworks or ChatGPT, or Copilot, or Bedrock, or Llama 2, for example, right? So you need to first identify what are those tools and technology you are going to use. But again, any technology which you are going to use, obviously cloud is the common denominator, right? Under the hood, you really need to work with cloud so that you can scale fast, right? And then once you build those, to integrate with the APIs so that you can give those kind of inferences or outputs much faster to your GenAI applications, right? So now this is a very high level, what I call at the business level. So let's dive deep into a little more details. That how you can think about a business architecture, right? So how you can now map down your strategy into the different components. So if I look at, hey, here you have cloud providers where you have infrastructure layers, right? And to ensure your compute, your storage, your network, your data analytics, and all that layers being used. But again, ensuring that you apply also the industry security best practices, starting from your data encryption to data pseudonymization and data anonymization, so on and so forth. And then the data quality is very important. How you're going to ensure the right data is being used for preparing your GenAI, right? And then you can create again, GenAI data repository or LLM repository, and then you can enhance them by using various prompt engineering and management. And last, right, I would say that can enhance now your GenAI applications, right? So this is more kind of from developer perspective, but also to think about how will I ensure my security and governance in place. And obviously you can see this layer, the access control and the security. So depending on what kind of applications you have, high, medium, or risk, high, medium, or low risk applications, based on again the data classifications, what you can do, you can use various methods to classify your data, and then based on that you can think about what controls can be applicable to high, medium, and and low risk applications. And based on that, then you can think about, okay, what kind of additional guardrails you need to put on top of your applications so that it is more secure, number one. And number two is very important also, that how you ensure that your data is not going outside of your network, right? And obviously you're using AWS or Azure or GCP, right? And you can use virtual private network, and that the virtual private cloud, and VPN and other mechanisms, so that your data stays inside. And obviously BB is going to cover more details on that. I'm not getting into that, right? And then the portfolio management. So to ensure that there is a portfolio management which can drive all your GenAI use cases. It can divide, it can take also data-driven value creations, and then manage your data lifecycle or lifecycle management for your data ops or LLM ops, right? And then that can also, when you start in implementing, there should be some kind of mechanism to manage your cost and values, right? That's what Andy talked about. Okay, hey, am I spending, or am I generating revenue out of it? And by these kind of mechanisms, you will be able to identify that whether you are making money or losing money. And now let's say AI governance. When you think about now moving your workload into productions, how you should think about building the applications, not in just silos, but you can be able to build the GenAI applications at scale, right? So if you look at, right, you have different GenAI applications for different business unit, and then there is a self-service GenAI infrastructure. As I said, cloud is your common denominator. You need to think about how you can leverage, right, infrastructure as a code, security as a code, and compliance as a code, so that you will be able to provision those resources at scale and at ease, right? And then here is you have secure LLM gateway, which can help you, and which is basically your common backbone for developing and deploying GenAI applications in secured and compliant manner. And at the bottom, you can see there are various um, layers. There's computer analytics layers. You can use different services from AWS or Azure or NVIDIA or GCP to Databricks to Snowflake and other applications.
You're in the last minute,
Yeah.
Sujant.
Okay. Yeah. And then and this what is the benefit you are going to get if you can use Cloud Hub's foundation? So Cloud Hub Foundation GenAI Foundation talks about 4 aspects: scalable and agile. That means you can start small and scale your AI applications as your business grows, right? And then business alignment is very important, as you talk about the goal and values, right? That's the reason whatever you are creating, that should support various use cases to drive your real world outcomes and cost efficient. Third of, that means you should be able to optimize your cost and source the values out of your GenAI applications. And last but not the least is this framework also will help you to build a secure and compliant workload. Okay, and lastly, so what architecture I talk about, or the foundation I talk about, this is the high level architecture, and we may just maybe need 1 more minute to just explain, and I'll hand over to you. So basically we have built this framework, using not just ChatGPT or something, but also more kind of RAG. So I don't know how many of you know about RAG. So it's retrieval augmented generation. That means you can take any LLM model and then train your internal data. That means your organized enterprise data on top of it, right? And then you'll be able to extract the values out of it by using various mechanisms. One is prompt engineering. Second is RAG, right? And if you look at this, what we have done is, so here is all the documents that's coming. Let's say the documents could be data, right? It could be internal, it could be public. So we are bringing the data into a database, and then using LLM models, we are creating for the vector database, right? And then those data are getting stored in vectors. And then, if you think about from the end user perspective, you will be using various prompt engineering technologies to, invoke those APIs or the functionalities, so that you can be able to use as a chat agent or as kind of general queries, and then it will hit that um, the database, and to get the corresponding response, and then give it back to you. So you can see here we're using obviously AWS technologies, or particularly Bedrock and Cloud 3.5 to productionize the applications, and also help customers to move their GenAI workloads into production much faster, ensuring that data governance, data security, and data compliance in place. Yeah. So again, any questions, you can always come back to me, and or send in the chat. Yeah. Over to you, Bib.
Okay, thank you, Sushant and Andy. So it's very exciting, right? So what you talk about, Andy, give you a context of the challenges C-level people faces, and then Susan talked about the platform. I'll share kind of our learning working with tens of thousand customers to kind of help imagine their businesses and build with generative AI. And the lessons we learned, I kind of go through them part of our engagement with customers. We work with financial services, for example, my team. We have other industry folks which works with cross industry as well. I'll share some of this learning and some of the strategy and approach, how you go about building generative AI applications and handle those difficult questions, as Andy pointed out. So let's look at some of the solutions were being implemented by Amazon. The first is the Office. It's a generative AI powered expert shopping assistant. It trained on Amazon's extensive product catalog and customer reviews and question answers. So it answers customer questions with natural language, right? And you want to understand a product, how it works, or its review. It basically works as an assistant and augment and improve your experience on Amazon website. And then the second bit is kind of the reviews. Now, if you go to the Amazon shopping website, you can see the summarized view of all the customer feedback on the top. And that's basically using generative AI power. So you don't have to go through a lot of customer feedback to get it. Uses the customer sentiments, the key product features, and customer feedback to build that summarized view, so that you can get a very quick glance of that summarized view and make a decisions. Or if you want to deep dive, you can do that as well. And the third use case, which Amazon using it, is kind of the pharmacy, which uses the unstructured data. Like when you get a pharmacist prescription, like let's say take these pills by mouth, using those kind of unstructured data and structuring it. And so that helps into efficient prescription filling, which reduces the human error potential. So it increases productivity, it removes some of the monotonous type of work customers and internal customers do. So it improves the experience of the customers. Go to the next slide, please. So if you look at the three categories of use cases we are seeing from customers, right? One is improving the internal and external customer experience. The second category is improving the productivity of employees and improving the creativity. And the third part is basically product innovations. And when we work with customers on those use cases, we have identified some key consideration and recommendation and the best practices as you build with generative AI. I think Susan mentioned about business value, but I think the first thing you need to do is understand, because generative AI is another tool set with your other tool sets as well, because it uses the advancement in machine learning and it's an additional tool set. So it's not the only tool set. So when you look at a business use case, a problem, do think about that. Does it need generative AI, or you can have other solutions you can use to efficiently address that challenge? So first and foremost is to need to move quickly, right? Understanding the business problem, showing the business value, understanding the data, what's required for the specific use case. And the second part is the importance of customization, right? You don't have to be bound to one specific solutions. You have the choice of flexibility so that you can scale later as you need for different use cases. And lastly is talk about that scale. So if you look at 23 is the year of POCs, and 24, some of our customers have moved multiple use cases to production, and we'll see that more and more happening in 25. So let's kind of deep dive into that scale part now. So when you looking at doing POCs and decided to take some of these use cases to production, as I mentioned, the 2024 is kind of moving some of those, addressing some of those challenges Andy mentioned, and moving some of the use case into production. It's exciting time because you're moving from proof of concept to into production. As they go about this through, there are some key themes and topics that we along our customer learn to prioritize. Right. First, you need to measure and track the business value and ROI, because some of the things that during the POC might be look quite attractive, but measuring those ROI and value is a big challenge as well. So make sure you have a plan to measure that. Second is the optimization. At AWS, we have prioritized the choice for your customer. So you need to find the right kind of solution, like foundation model, for example, using your own data. So have you taken into consider the cost, the latency, and accuracy for specific use case? So customers moving to production should have a plan to monitor and refine over time as the technology advances, because you have better models available. How do you use that for the use cases you have taken into production? And the third bit is the managing the risk, maintaining a trust and building responsibly with the right compliance and governance structure that ensures that not only you protect your business, your customer, your employees, but you build the trust on the GenAI application as well. And obviously you need the infrastructure to scale, you need the solutions, you need the tools to scale, because your different use case will demand different type of foundation model, different type of requirements. So you need to have a solution and platform to be able to scale that as well. So I think both Susan and Andy mentioned that security is kind of very important. So it's important that prioritize security from the start. When you're thinking of building use case for POCs even, you need to start thinking about the security of kind of the application, what data it access, what confidential data you're sharing part of the generative AI, how do you protect your business, your organization, your data, your customer. And there are several key considerations, as I showed in the slides. And this includes compliance and governance, for example, legal and privacy, the controls. Have you got the right control in terms of safeguarding the GenAI application, safeguarding your organization, safeguarding your customer? Risk management, you have the right risk assessment, because some of them already exist part of your traditional machine learning. But what it does that it needs to be upgraded to include the specificities for generative AI, right? So because it amplifies some of the security aspects for generative AI, because now you're using a lot of third-party model, for example. Like how do you safeguard your own organization's assets? Risk management in terms of threat modeling. For if you're building a generative AI application, threat modeling, you need to look at all the aspects of kind of protecting that application for the customer. Resilience is important. So if you're building application for external customer, you need to make sure that you have the right kind of architecture and the solution to be able to support that scale of business or the scale of interaction to the generative AI.
Or in your last minute, if possible, Wiep.
Okay, cool. So a couple of things I will touch on briefly is responsible AI. So there's a lot of discussion about what constitutes of responsible AI, but we're looking at kind of this 8 buckets: the fairness, the explainability, controllability, safety, the privacy, security, governance, transparency, and veracity of robustness. As you build generative application in the foundation model, carefully consider how the technology impacts different groups, right? Prevents harmful system outputs and misuse, informs the stakeholders around how they engage with the AI system, and includes mechanism to monitor the AI system behavior, right? Because the impact will be much wider just than the application. Next one. So these are some of the best practices we have seen from responsible AI dimensions that kind of get translated into real practice. We outlined 4 best practices here to innovate responsibly with generative AI. One is put your people first. It's critical to prioritize and deepen your workforce education in terms of so that your people understand how the generative AI works, right? Assess the risk by use case, iterate across the AI lifecycle, and then learn from it, right? So you don't have to kind of do the use case in the first go. You can do internal use cases first to learn from it about the risk, and then start exploring that use case for external users as well. Testing is very important. Test again, and test again. Rigorous testing is a secret strategy, what we recommend. Go to the last slide, please. So till this point, we've been talking about our learning with working with customers. So just to briefly touch on, before I stop, briefly touch on the generative AI stack in building safely, securely, responsible. How you can get started, right? So you need some kind of performant, cost-effective infrastructure, which is the bottom layers, to be able to fine-tune a model. If you want to build your foundation model, a secure, private, easy way to build and scale powerful generative AI applications with this foundation model. And you need the guardrail, the safety features to protect your application, protect your data. And data is the differentiator, what's going to differentiate your business from other business, because the third-party foundation models, large language models, all the company can access that. The data is the differentiator in terms of how they can to know your customer better, your organization better. And a generative AI-powered assistant for accelerating software development is the other angle you need to look at to increase productivity and infuse those technology to improve the developer's experience as well. And this is all kind of AWS options as well, and built with a high bar for giving you the broad and deep capabilities, choice, and enterprise readiness. So yeah, very excited to be kind of here to take your questions on this alongside the other panels. Back to you.
Thank you, Wiep. All 3 speakers, Andy, Suzanne, and Wiep, thank you very much for sharing your presentation and also your expertise. We have received some questions. First one for you, Andy. It's a business question. Obviously, there's a much talk about Gen AI, about replacing, for instance, call centers or client support teams. But in your opinion, Andy, does Gen AI adoption lead to immediate cost savings or revenue generation for enterprise? So which one is it? Or is it a long-term investment?
Yeah, so, and I think Wiep touched upon this, right? So the best way, so the answer is it depends, right? And why it depends is that Gen AI is it's not a magic bullet, right? Your Gen AI solution is not a silver bullet that you put it out there and say it's going to solve all the problems, for the very reasons such as the foundation models have got commoditized now. All your competitors have access to it. So the trick lies in how quickly are you able to put it out there and then evaluate it using some of the metrics that Bib mentioned about, right? How much are you spending for it on it? How much revenue is it generating? What's the adoption been? Is the adoption increasing? Is it decreasing? So yes, it will provide cost savings, right? But then it's not that by putting it out there, it guarantees you cost saving. It's a nurturing that needs to be done by organizations to put it out there, test, add new features, see what's been used, what's not been used, what else can be added. So when that is done right, you will start seeing incremental benefits.
Yeah, I just want to add one more point, maybe, and Andy, to right. You can think about if you can compare with also the cloud adoption, right? So if you're adopting cloud, you won't get the immediate benefits, right? Unless you are really using at scale, right? You are migrating your data center into your cloud, right? You cannot just get the benefit by using just for one or two applications, but yeah, over the 100 applications you'll be able to see, right? So similar analogy we can able to do, right? If I just have one use case, just couple of business users, maybe yes, not you may not be able to do that, but think about any kind of use case which can be repeatable, right? Which can really pain in your ass organizations, and you can see that maybe, hey, 10 departments, 5 departments can go and use it, and they can really save maybe at least 20%, 30% of their manpower. So in that kind of aspect, you will be definitely able to see there is a long-term value, right? But again, you need to have the sweet spot and the exact use case which can really give you money back.
All right. Well, thank you for both Andy and Suzanne for this reply. Pip, I have a question for you. Obviously, from Cloud Hub, I have a question. How can enterprises leverage Cloud Hub's solution to ensure their Gen AI ecosystem remains future-proof while addressing critical aspects like AI governance and data privacy?
Yeah, an excellent question. Yeah. Okay. Maybe.
Yeah, for
Do
Pip.
you want to go? Yeah, go for it. Okay.
Yeah, so no, thank you, Jet. So I think the three verticals we are seeing customers using it, right? So one is in terms of scaling generative AI. One is the use cases specifically for line of business, right? Where you're looking at a specific line of business, a specific line of products, and looking at the end-to-end process where looking at specific areas where you can automate, increase productivity, or innovate kind of the solutions and the product customer is building. Whether it's improving, automating some of the processes, or it's, for example, creating content for marketing campaign, for example. So use case is one line of thought. The second bit is the platform. So once you put 5 to 10 use cases in production, you need a platform to scale, to reuse, to optimize kind of those use cases so that you can build 30, 40 use cases, right? And the third bit, which is kind of the security, the governance, the center of excellence for generative AI, right? So you need to have a group of people who can cross-functional team who can manage that, understand the impact across the kind of overarching organizations, right? So the first two buckets, I think what Shushan talked about from a Cloud Hub solution. So I see that it addresses the first two bucket, right? Delivering specific use cases or scaling those multiple use cases to production, right? Susan, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, exactly. Let me just go back to that particular slide, and it can really give you the values, right? So if you look at how Cloud Hub framework is going to help, right? So starting, as I said, we are giving a framework and also the plus tool, right? But the first, how the tool is going to help you in terms of data security and governance, right? The first one I talk about, that there is a data security and governance framework we have, which can help you to identify your risk. Based on the risk, what kind of controls you should have in place. Number one. Number two, you can also now tie back that with your AI governance. That means that's where AI governance body, which will be also looking at, okay, hey, what are coming from these data classifications? What kind of data we are going to use, right? Is it more sensitive, non-sensitive data, or is public data? So depending on that, you need to then ensure that you have the right governance, both from the AI perspective as well from the data security and data privacy perspective to safeguard your data, right? And again, the framework also will help you to automatically enable those controls, right? For example, we have helped customer in terms of control towers and security hub by enabling various CIS version 3 or AWS foundational security best practices benchmark. Those kind of controls you can enable where it can take care of all your data security and data privacy aspect, right? And then the last but not least is the framework and the solution what we have, right? It can enable you to productionalize your initial use cases, right? Whether you want to do anything for your FinOps or for your cloud ops or for any kind of, for example, data migrations. I was talking to, also Andy before, right? That means you want to now, everyone wants to migrate into Snowflake, right? The data migration is a classic example where you can use again our platform to seamlessly migrate your schemas, migrate your stored procedures, your triggers, and everything, and then finally the data and do the data validation and the testing, seamlessly without much kind of human intervention. Definitely human intervention, what we talk about test and test and test, that's required, but the lots of heavy lifting can be done by using our platform and our framework. Maybe JB, you are speaking in mute. We can take maybe one or two more questions, and yeah, we can extend for 5 more minutes.
Yeah, we have some time for another question.
Yep.
Okay. Andy, you mentioned challenges enterprises face when generative AI adoption. So when enterprises adopt Gen AI, what are the top 3 challenges you believe they run into?
The first one is a little philosophical, and I would call it the organizational self-awareness, right? And which means that everyone sees everyone else using Gen AI. But what we also have to realize is, in terms of adoption maturity, each organization is different, and they are at different parts of the adoption curve. So just because it took a startup maybe 5 months to come up with a Gen AI solution and productionize it, doesn't mean that every other organization needs to set that as a benchmark. So the first thing is, organizations really need to do an analysis of where they stand, and then identify what are the foundations that they need to have in place to reach the same level of adoption. So the first is, we tend to overestimate our capabilities, and so a prudent view of what the organization's maturity is. And the second one, of course, is understanding of Gen AI, right? Which is it's been used as a broad term, and I think the expectations are very high. And when the expectations are very high, then the disappointment also can quickly come in, right? So it's called the grief curve. So if you don't see the results quickly, then you tend to, or the way that you want to see them, then there is a compensation that happens immediately, right? There a knee-jerk reaction to pull back investment. So that's something that organizations need to be aware of, and this applies to any sort of technology adoption as well. And the third one that I would say is really skills. And when I say skills, it's in terms of, there's a new mindset that is needed, right? So it's like the difference between Newtonian physics and quantum physics. So cloud provided that first jump of actually breaking away from silos and thinking about scale in a different way. Gen AI helps us think about speed in a different way. So I think it's also for organizations to understand that aspect. So when it comes to skilling, that you need to look at your Gen AI solutions differently, right? You need to start really riding the wave of this innovation. And yeah, like there used to be a joke that we used to have is sometimes in cloud migration, if you take your data center and put it on the cloud, you get a data center in the cloud. So you need to start building applications that are suited for cloud. And so in terms of skilling, people really need to start thinking in terms of the architecture that Sushant had shared. And that makes the journey to Gen AI a lot more fun.
Great.
Just
It
want
was a
to
good.
add,
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add to Andy. I think that was love that, Andy. The other thing just want to add is you need to look at use case by use case, right? So, for example, recommending kind of the specific music, that type of use case is very different. It's not same as using AI to identify tumors on X-rays, right? Because the use case, the risk for each use case is very different. So looking at those low-hanging fruits or low-risk use cases could be as a early adapter, right, for generative AI. And you need to go through that iterations and learn from it. You need to kind of introduce the right guardrails, for example, testing strategy, still valid for any enterprise applications you're building, right? So that still applies to generative AI. So if you look at those kind of low-hanging fruits as a first step to understand alongside educating your people, so that helps quite a lot in adopting kind of this innovation.
So
Yeah,
start
so
small.
thanks for
and
that.
adapt.
Yeah, thanks for that, Vib. So I think that's where the self-awareness of the organization comes in, right? Because low-hanging fruit probably works well for organizations that are just starting their journey, and then some more, that are already ahead. They can build the type of use cases, and of course, yeah, healthcare is a big field in
but
itself.
also
But thanks
right,
for that. Thanks for that example.
But and also I see, right, even if the leadership team, I have spoken to a couple of organizations, and even the leadership team, they just get rid of saying, okay, data security, just kind of excuse what I always see people talk about. Oh yeah, my data security, what will happen if I go and use GenAI? If you are not sure about how security works in cloud, for example, then maybe you are not fit into the organizations, right? Because everyone is moving into cloud and AI and all that. So I think it's better you need to be well prepared for that kind of environment or ecosystem. That's the reason we are talking about, hey, how you can enable your GenAI ready, ecosystems in cloud, because your cloud is much more stronger or secure than your data center. You need to think about that and then move ahead, right? The lots of awareness is required, right? As an organizations, mind sharing and training awareness is very, very important in this aspect.
Taking a look at the clock, I think I want to round up and thank everyone for joining us today in this really insightful session on the architecture of the future of Gen AI ready ecosystems in the cloud. And of course, a big thank you to our speakers, Andy, Sushant, and Bip, for sharing your expertise and giving us a deeper understanding of how to prepare for and embrace the possibilities of generative AI in the cloud. Your insights have been invaluable and have undoubtedly sparked some ideas for us all. Of course, I also like to thank our audience for your participation and engagement. We appreciated your questions and hope the discussion has inspired you to think about the next steps in your Gen AI journey. As I mentioned earlier, this is just the beginning. Today's website is the first in a series of 5 generative AIs. While the date for the second webinar has not yet been determined, rest assured we'll be in touch with the details as soon as we have. Keep an eye on your inbox or the LinkedIn for updates and registration information. Once again,
and
thank
they
you
can
very
also
much.
fill out. So maybe JB, they can also fill out the questionnaire. So their feedback, on this link. I have provided here in the link, right? Your
Scan
feedback
the
is
QR
very
code.
valuable.
Yeah, thanks very much. And for us, we found it very valuable, and we hope that you also found it valuable. And we would like to see you back next time. Have a great day, and
Thank you.
thanks very much to all.